You know what's strange? We spend decades building a life, a career, a reputation, and then one morning we wake up and realize we've been following a script we never wrote. Someone else's words, someone else's fears, someone else's definition of who we're supposed to be. And here's what nobody tells you when you're younger. That feeling doesn't go away just because you're older. In fact, it gets louder. Because now you know, time isn't infinite anymore. And that changes everything. So let me ask you something, and I want you to really think about this. What if the reason you feel stuck isn't because you're too old or too late or too far behind? What if it's simpler than that? What if your mind is still running on programming installed decades ago by people who didn't know your potential? Here's the truth most motivational speakers won't tell you. You don't need more motivation. You need something deeper, something that actually lasts. And by the end of this, you'll understand why some people transform their entire life in their 50s, while others stay trapped in the same patterns until their last breath. The difference isn't luck, it's not genetics, and it's definitely not too late for you. But first, we need to talk about what's really been holding you back. And I promise you, it's not what you think. You know what nobody prepares you for? That moment, somewhere in your 40s or 50s, when you look around at the life you've built and think, wait, is this it? Is this what I was working toward? It's not that your life is bad. Maybe you've done everything right. Maybe you followed the path, got the education, built the career, raised the family, paid the bills on time, checked all the boxes. And yet, there's this feeling, this quiet, persistent feeling that something is off. Like you've been playing a role in someone else's story. And the strange part, you can't even remember auditioning for it. I want you to think about something for a second. Really think about it. How many of the beliefs you carry today, the ones that guide your decisions, your reactions, your sense of what's possible, how many of those beliefs did you actually choose? I'm not talking about your opinions on politics or sports. I'm talking about the deep ones, the ones that run in the background, like, I'm not the kind of person who does that, or people like me don't get those opportunities, or I'm too old to start something new. Where did those come from? Because here's what I've learned. After years of watching people transform their lives, and after studying why some people break free while others stay stuck until their final breath. Your mind is not really yours. Not completely. Not yet. Let me explain what I mean. Your brain, the physical organ in your skull, that's hardware. It's biological. It's real. You can touch it, scan it, measure it. But your mind is different. Your mind is software. It's the operating system, the programming, the code that tells you how to think, how to react, how to interpret everything that happens to you. And here's the part that changes everything. That software, you didn't write it. Think about a computer for a second. When you buy it, it comes with pre-installed programs. Some of them are useful. Some of them you never asked for. And some of them are actually slowing the whole system down. Bloatware, viruses, old updates that don't work anymore. Your mind is the same. From the moment you were born, people started installing programs. Your parents installed some, your teachers installed others. Your first heartbreak, that installed something. Your first failure, that wrote code too. That time someone laughed at you in front of others, program installed. That moment your father said you were too sensitive, or your mother said you were not as smart as your brother. Code, running in the background, even now. And the cruel part? Most of this programming happened before you were old enough to question it, before you had the awareness to say, wait, is this true? Do I actually believe this?
Or did I just hear it so many times that it became part of me? You were maybe 7 years old when someone told you you weren't good at math. And you believed them. Because why wouldn't you? They were an adult. They were the authority. So your mind wrote it down, saved it, filed it under facts about me. And 40 years later, you still avoid numbers. You still say, I'm not a numbers person, without even thinking about it. That's programming. Or maybe you were 10 when you raised your hand in class, excited to share an idea, and the teacher dismissed it. Or worse, the other kids laughed. And in that moment, your mind made a decision, a survival decision. It said, speaking up is dangerous. Being visible is risky. It's safer to stay quiet. And you carried that code into every meeting, every relationship, every opportunity where you could have spoken up, but didn't. Not because you had nothing to say, but because the program was running. Here's what makes this so insidious. You don't see it as programming. You see it as personality, as just the way I am. You say things like, I've always been shy. I've never been good at taking risks. I'm just not creative. I'm too old to change. And you believe it because it feels true. It feels like you. But what if it's not? What if the reason you feel stuck, the reason you wake up some mornings and feel like you're living someone else's life, isn't because there's something wrong with you? What if you've been running software installed by people who had their own fears, their own limitations, their own broken programming? Your father told you to be practical because you tried to follow his dreams once and failed. So he installed fear into you, disguised as wisdom. Your mother told you to not get your hopes up because she got hurt when she hoped too much, so she installed low expectations into you, disguised as protection. Your first boss told you to stay in your lane because he was threatened by anyone who thought bigger than the role, so he installed smallness into you, disguised as professionalism. And now, decades later, you're living inside those invisible walls, not because they're real, but because they were built before you knew you had a choice. Now, here's the question that matters. If your mind was programmed, can it be reprogrammed? And the answer that changes everything, is yes. But not the way most people think. See, most self-help advice treats your mind like it just needs a pep talk. Like if you just think positive or repeat affirmations or visualize success, everything will magically change. And listen, those things can help, but they're surface level. They're like putting a fresh coat of paint on a house with a cracked foundation. It might look better for a while, but the structure underneath? Still broken. Reprogramming your mind isn't about motivation. Motivation fades. Reprogramming is about going deeper, into the code, into the beliefs, into the patterns that have been running automatically for so long that you forgot they were ever installed. Let me tell you what this looks like in real life. I knew a man, 53 years old, worked the same job for 28 years. Not because he loved it. He didn't. He actually hated it. But every time he thought about leaving, every time he imagined doing something different, a voice in his head would say, "You're too old. You don't have the skills. You'll lose everything. Stay where it's safe." And he listened to that voice. Because it sounded like him. Like his own thoughts. His own common sense. But one day, during a performance review, his younger manager, someone half his age, spoke to him in a way that felt disrespectful, dismissive. And in that moment, something cracked. Not in a breaking way, in a waking up way. He went home that night and asked himself a question he hadn't asked in decades. Whose voice is that? The one that tells me to stay small. And when he really listened, really paid attention, he realized it wasn't his voice. It was his father's. His father who worked at the same factory for 40 years and died 6 months after retirement. His father who always said, "A job is a job. Just be grateful you have one. And in that moment, 53 years old, he realized he'd been living his father's fear, not his own truth. That realization, that was the beginning of his reprogramming. He didn't quit his job the next day. He didn't make some reckless decision. But he started asking different questions. He started noticing the programming. And slowly, carefully, he started rewriting it. 2 years later, he left that job, started his own consulting business, and last I heard, he's making twice what he made before. But more importantly, he's awake. He's living his life, not his father's, not his old boss's. His. That's what reprogramming looks like. It's not flashy, it's not instant, but it's real. And here's what I need you to understand. If you're over 45, you've been running the same mental software for decades. Some of it is good. Some of it has served you well. But some of it, maybe a lot of it, is outdated, corrupted, installed by people who didn't know your potential, who didn't see your future, who were just trying to survive their own programming. And the most dangerous part? You don't even know it's there. It's invisible. It runs automatically. It feels like just the way things are. But it's not. Here's the truth that no one wants to say out loud. You are not too old. You are not too late. You're not stuck because you lack talent or intelligence or opportunity. You're stuck because your mind is still running code from 20, 30, 40 years ago. Code that told you to play it safe, to not make waves, to be grateful for what you have and stop wanting more. Code that said, you had your chance. This is your life now. Accept it. But what if you don't have to accept it? What if the second half of your life, the half that's still ahead of you, could be the half where you finally live on your terms? Not because you ignore the past, but because you stop letting the past program your future. I'm not going to lie to you. This isn't easy. Reprogramming your mind takes awareness. It takes honesty. It takes looking at beliefs you've carried your whole life and asking, is this actually true? And sometimes the answer is painful because you realize how much time you spent living inside limitations that were never yours. But here's the other side of that pain. Freedom. Once you see the programming, you can't unsee it. And once you start rewriting it, everything changes. Not overnight, but steadily, surely. The voice that used to say, you can't, starts to quiet down. The fear that used to stop you starts to lose its grip. The patterns that kept you stuck start to break. And you begin to feel something you haven't felt in a long time. Possibility. Not the naive kind. Not the kind that ignores reality. But the kind that says, I have more life left and I get to choose what I do with it. So let me ask you again. How much of what you believe about yourself did you actually choose? And if the answer is not much, then isn't it time to start choosing? Because your mind, your beautiful, powerful, still capable mind, is waiting. It's been waiting for you to stop running someone else's program and start writing your own.
But here's what nobody tells you about how deep this programming really goes. The programming runs deep, but there's something even more subtle, even more powerful, something you do every single day without even thinking about it, and it's keeping you exactly where you are. Let me ask you something. What did you do this morning? No, really. Think about it. What time did you wake up? What was the first thing you reached for? Did you check your phone? Did you hit snooze? Did you go through the same routine, in the same order, that you've done for the last, how many years? Now think about yesterday morning. Was it different?
What about the morning before that? And here's the uncomfortable truth. If I asked you to describe your morning routine from 5 years ago, it would probably sound exactly the same. Same time, same sequence, same thoughts running through your head while you're doing it. You're not living different days. You're living the same day on repeat. And somewhere deep inside, you know this. You felt it. That strange déjà vu feeling where you can't tell if it's Tuesday or Thursday because they all blur together. Where you get to the end of the week and think, wait, where did the time go? Where months pass and you realize nothing has actually changed. This is what I call the pattern trap. And it's different from programming. Programming is what you believe. Patterns are what you do. And here's why patterns are so dangerous. They feel safe. They feel comfortable. They feel like just the way you are. Your brain loves patterns. It craves them because patterns are efficient. They're automatic. They require no thought, no decision, no energy. Think about the first time you drove a car. You had to think about everything. Check the mirror, adjust the seat, put your foot on the brake, turn the key, look both ways, signal. Every single action required attention. It was exhausting. But now, you get in the car and you just drive. You're thinking about your grocery list. You're planning your day. You arrive at your destination, and sometimes you don't even remember the drive. That's a pattern. Your brain automated it. And that's beautiful when it comes to driving. But what happens when your entire life becomes automated? When you're not just driving on autopilot, but living on autopilot. When every morning is the same, every evening is the same, every weekend is the same, every conversation is the same, every reaction is the same, every choice is the same. You're not lazy, you're not unmotivated, you're just looping. And the scariest part? You don't even notice it anymore because the pattern has become invisible. It's just what you do. Let me paint you a picture. And I want you to see if this sounds familiar. You wake up. Maybe you meant to wake up earlier. Maybe you set your alarm with good intentions last night. But when it goes off, you hit snooze. Just 5 more minutes. You tell yourself it doesn't matter, it's just 5 minutes. But it does matter, because that's the first decision of the day, and you just chose comfort over commitment. Then you get up, you check your phone. Maybe you tell yourself you're just checking the time, but 30 minutes later, you're still scrolling. News, messages, social media, other people's lives, other people's problems, other people's opinions. And you haven't even started your own day yet. Then you rush through your morning, shower, coffee, maybe breakfast, maybe not, out the door, already behind, already stressed, already reacting instead of creating. You get to work, or you start your day at home, and you tell yourself, today will be different. Today I'll focus. Today I'll make progress on that thing I've been putting off. But then the emails start, the calls, the interruptions, the little fires you need to put out. And before you know it, it's lunchtime. Then it's afternoon. Then it's evening. And you're tired. So, you do what you always do. You sit down, you turn on the TV, or you scroll again. Or you have a drink. Or you eat something you didn't plan to eat. Not because you're hungry, but because it's the pattern. And you tell yourself, tomorrow. Tomorrow I'll do better. But tomorrow comes, and it's the same. Because the pattern is running. And the pattern doesn't change just because you want it to. This is the loop. And millions of people, good people, smart people, capable people, are stuck in it. Not because they're weak, but because no one ever taught them how to break it. Here's what you need to understand. Your brain is designed to keep you alive, not happy, not successful, not fulfilled, alive. And from your brain's perspective, the safest thing you can do is repeat what you did yesterday. Because yesterday, you survived. You made it through. You're still here. So why risk anything different? Why try something new? Why disrupt the pattern? That could be dangerous. That could lead to failure, to embarrassment, to loss. Better to stay in the familiar, even if the familiar is miserable. This is why you can know exactly what you need to do and still not do it. This is why you can want to change and still repeat the same behaviors. This is why you can feel stuck for years, even though logically you know you have options. It's not a willpower problem, it's a pattern problem. And here's the truth that will either scare you or wake you up. If you've been living the same pattern for 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, your brain has carved that pattern so deep into your neural pathways that it's now the path of least resistance. It's automatic, unconscious, effortless. Breaking it, that requires effort, consciousness, intention. And most people, they try for a day, maybe a week, but then the pattern pulls them back because the pattern is stronger than their intention. So they give up. They say, I guess this is just who I am. But that's not who you are. That's just what you've been doing. And there's a difference. Let me tell you about a man named Joe Dispenza. In 1986, he was competing in a triathlon, riding his bike, and a truck hit him. He was thrown off his bike, landed on his back, multiple vertebrae in his spine shattered. The doctors told him he needed surgery, metal rods, screws. They said even with surgery, he might never walk normally again. He might live with chronic pain for the rest of his life. And without surgery, they said he'd probably be paralyzed. But Joe, he had been studying the mind, neuroscience, the connection between thought and biology, and he made a decision that everyone around him thought was crazy. He refused surgery. Instead, he went inward. Every day, for hours, he would lie still and he would visualize. Not just imagine, visualize. He would see in his mind every single vertebrae in his spine. He would picture them whole, aligned, healed. He would feel it as if it was already real. He didn't hope it would happen. He lived as if it already had. And here's what's important. This wasn't positive thinking. This wasn't affirmations. This was deep. This was mental rehearsal, training his brain, interrupting the pattern of fear and pain, replacing it with a pattern of healing and wholeness. For weeks, nothing happened. Physically, he was still broken, but mentally, he was building a new pattern. And then, slowly, things started to shift. Feeling returned, movement returned, strength returned. 9 weeks later, he stood up. 10 weeks later, he walked out of his house. 12 weeks later, he was back to his normal life. No surgery, no rods, no paralysis. The doctors couldn't explain it, but Joe could. He had broken the pattern of fear, the pattern of believing what the outside world told him was possible. He rewired his brain, and his body followed. Now, I'm not telling you this story to say you can heal anything just by thinking about it. I'm telling you this story to show you something deeper. The pattern you're stuck in, it feels permanent. It feels like reality, but it's not. It's just familiar. And the moment you interrupt it, even just once, your brain wakes up. It realizes, oh, there's another way. And that's where change begins. Not in some big dramatic transformation, but in one small break in the pattern. So here's what I want you to consider. What if you changed just one thing tomorrow morning? Not your whole life, just one thing. What if you didn't hit snooze? What if you didn't check your phone for the first hour? What if you drank a glass of water before your coffee? What if you sat in silence for 5 minutes before the chaos started? It sounds small, insignificant even. But here's what happens. Your brain notices. It says, wait, something's different. And in that moment, just for a second,
The pattern is interrupted. The loop has a break in it. And that break, that's your opening. That's where new choices become possible. Because you can't build a new life with an old pattern. You can't create a different future by doing the same things every day. And you can't reprogram your mind if your daily rhythm stays the same. The pattern has to break first. And the beautiful thing? You don't have to break all of it, just one piece, one small decision that's different from yesterday. And then tomorrow, maybe one more. Because a pattern isn't destroyed in one day. It's dissolved, slowly, by being replaced with something better. You've been living on repeat for long enough. And I know part of you is scared because the pattern feels safe. It's what you know. But ask yourself this, is it really safe? Or is it just familiar? Because staying the same when you know you're capable of more, that's not safety. That's slow surrender. And you didn't come this far in life to surrender now. So tomorrow morning, when you wake up, before the pattern pulls you in, just do one thing differently and notice how it feels. Notice how your brain resists. Notice how it tries to pull you back. But also notice the small sense of possibility, the tiny crack of light. That crack, that's where your new life begins. But once you start breaking the pattern, you're going to notice something else, something that's been there all along. Something that's been quietly running your decisions, your fears, your sense of what you deserve. And it's time we talk about it. You've seen the programming. You've felt the pattern. But now we need to talk about something deeper. Something that's been living in your mind for so long, you think it's the truth. I'm talking about your beliefs. Not the ones you talk about at dinner parties. Not your opinions on religion or politics. I'm talking about the beliefs you have about yourself. The ones that whisper in your head when no one else is listening. The ones that say, I can't do that. That's not for someone like me. I missed my chance. I'm too old to start over. I'm just not that kind of person. These beliefs, they feel like facts. They feel like reality. They feel like just the way things are. But here's what I need you to understand. A belief is not a fact. A belief is just a thought that you've thought so many times your brain stopped questioning it. It accepted it, filed it away, and now it uses that belief to make every decision, to filter every opportunity, to justify every limitation. And the most painful part? Most of your limiting beliefs, you didn't even create them. They were handed to you by people who loved you, by people who were trying to protect you, by people who had their own fears, their own failures, their own broken dreams. And they passed those beliefs down to you like inherited furniture. You've been carrying them around for decades, moving them from house to house, from job to job, from relationship to relationship. And you never stop to ask, wait, is this even mine? Do I actually believe this? Or am I just believing it because someone else told me to? Let me give you an example. Think about someone in your life, maybe a parent, maybe a teacher, maybe a boss from early in your career, who told you something about yourself, something that stuck. Maybe they said, you're not good with people, or you'll never be wealthy. That's just not realistic for our family. Or you need to have a backup plan because dreams don't pay the bills.
or "You're too sensitive. You're not disciplined enough. You're not smart enough to do that." And in that moment, when you were younger, when you didn't have the life experience to challenge it, you believed them. Not because it was true, but because they said it with authority, with certainty, and your young mind thought, they must know. They're older, they've lived longer, they must be right about me. So you took that belief, and you made it part of your identity. You started acting like it was true. You started making choices based on it. You started avoiding things that contradicted it. And over time, that belief became a cage. An invisible cage. You can't see the bars, but you can feel them. Every time you think about doing something different, the bars appear. Every time you imagine a bigger life, the cage reminds you of its limits, and you stay inside. Not because you have to, but because you believe you do. Here's what makes this so devastating. These beliefs, they're not just limiting your actions. They're limiting your imagination. You can't even dream about certain things anymore because your belief system won't allow it. You've trained your mind to automatically shut down possibilities before you even try, before you even research, before you even ask. Your belief says no, and you listen because it sounds like common sense, like wisdom, like just being realistic. But what if it's not realistic? What if it's just old programming from someone who had their own limitations? Let me tell you about something that happened in the 1950s. For decades, hundreds of years actually, people believed that the human body could run a mile in under 4 minutes. Doctors said it was physically impossible. Scientists agreed. They said the human heart would explode, the bones would shatter, the lungs would collapse. It became a universal belief, not just in the running community, in the medical community, in society. It was accepted as biological fact. Runners tried. The best athletes in the world tried, and they all failed, which just reinforced the belief. See, it can't be done. We were right. But then, in 1954, a British medical student named Roger Bannister decided to try anyway. Not because he didn't know about the belief. He knew. Everyone told him. But he questioned it. He thought, what if they're wrong? What if the limit isn't physical? What if it's mental? So he trained differently. He visualized differently. He believed differently. And on May 6th, 1954, he ran the mile in 3 minutes and 59 seconds. He broke the 4-minute barrier. And here's where it gets interesting. Within 1 year, 37 other runners also broke the 4-minute mile. Within 2 years, over 300 runners did it. The record that stood for centuries suddenly fell again and again and again. Why? Did human biology suddenly evolve? Did our bones get stronger overnight? Did our hearts become more powerful? No. The only thing that changed was the belief. Once one person proved it was possible, everyone else's mind said, "Oh, it can be done." The barrier was never physical, it was mental. And the floodgates opened. This is what's happening in your life right now. You have your own 4-minute mile. Something you believe is impossible, too late, too hard, not for you. And that belief is the only thing standing between you and the attempt. Not your age, not your circumstances, not your past, your belief. So let me ask you something. What is your 4-minute mile? What have you stopped trying because you believe it can't be done? Starting over in a new career? learning a new skill, leaving a relationship that died years ago, starting a business, writing that book, traveling alone, speaking up, getting healthy, finding love again, creating something that matters. What dream did you bury because someone told you it wasn't realistic and you believed them? Here's the truth: most of the beliefs you carry about your limitations were installed by people who never accomplished what you're capable of. They projected their ceiling onto you, and you accepted it. Your father told you to be practical because he tried something bold once and it didn't work, so he stopped trying. And he wanted you to avoid the pain he felt, but his failure doesn't define your capacity. Your mother told you not to get your hopes up because she was disappointed too many times, so she lowered her expectations. And she taught you to do the same. But her heartbreak doesn't determine your future. Your first boss told you to stay in your lane because you were starting to outgrow him, and that scared him. So he put a ceiling on you.
But his insecurity doesn't limit your potential. These people, they weren't trying to hurt you. They were trying to protect you. But they protected you by shrinking you. And now, decades later, you're still living inside those boundaries. Boundaries that were never real. So how do you break them? How do you eliminate a limiting belief that's been with you for 40 years? It starts with awareness. You have to catch the belief. Most of the time, these beliefs run automatically. You don't even hear them anymore. They're just background noise, part of your inner dialogue. So you have to start listening, really listening. When you think about trying something new, what does your mind say? When you imagine a better future, what voice shows up to shut it down? When you see someone else succeeding, what do you tell yourself about why you couldn't do the same? Catch those thoughts. Write them down. Look at them. And then ask the most powerful question you can ask. Is this absolutely true? Not, does it feel true? Not, have I always believed this? But, is this absolutely, objectively, undeniably true? Most of the time, the answer is no. It's not true. It's just familiar. And once you see that, once you realize that this belief you've carried like a stone in your pocket is just a story someone told you, it starts to lose its power. Then you replace it. Not with some fake affirmation that you don't believe, but with something more useful, more accurate, more aligned with who you're becoming. If the old belief was, I'm too old to start something new, the new one might be, people start new things at every age. I have experience and wisdom I didn't have before. That's an advantage. If the old belief was, I always fail, the new one might be, I've failed before, and I've also succeeded before. Failure taught me. Now I know more. If the old belief was, I'm not the kind of person who does that, the new one might be, I'm becoming the kind of person who does that. I get to decide who I am now. You don't have to believe it fully at first. You just have to be willing to question the old belief and open the door to a new one. Because here's what happens when you start dismantling limiting beliefs. You start seeing opportunities you couldn't see before. You start taking action you were too scared to take before. You start becoming someone you didn't think you could be before. Not because you suddenly became more capable, but because you stopped believing you weren't. And let me tell you something that might surprise you. You have an advantage now that you didn't have at 25. You have pattern recognition. You've lived long enough to see that most of the things you were afraid of didn't happen. Most of the disasters you imagined never came. Most of the judgments you feared didn't matter. You've survived everything life has thrown at you so far. Every heartbreak, every failure, every loss, every disappointment. You're still here, still standing, still capable of change. And that is evidence. Evidence that you're stronger than your beliefs have told you. Evidence that you can handle more than you think. Evidence that the limitations you've accepted were never as solid as they seemed. So here's what I want you to do. Not someday, today. Right now, after you finish listening to this, I want you to identify one limiting belief. Just one. The one that's been holding you back the most. The one that shows up every time you think about change. Write it down, look at it, and ask yourself, who gave this to me? When did I start believing this? Is this absolutely true? What would be possible if I stopped believing it? You don't have to change your whole life today. You just have to question one belief, because that one belief might be the only thing standing between you and the life you've been afraid to imagine. And once you remove it, once you see that the barrier was never real, everything shifts. But beliefs aren't the only thing shaping your reality. There's something else, something you're exposed to every single day, something that's quietly influencing your thoughts, your mood, your sense of what's possible. And most people have no idea it's even happening.
Here's something most people don't realize until it's too late. Your mind is still learning, still absorbing, still being shaped. Right now, today, this very moment. It doesn't matter that you're 45 or 55 or 65. Your brain is still taking in information, still forming patterns, still being influenced by everything around you. And here's the uncomfortable truth. Most of what you're feeding your mind is making you weaker, more anxious, more distracted, more tired, not stronger, not clearer, not more capable, weaker. And you don't even realize it's happening because it happens slowly, drop by drop, day by day, like a glass of clean water, slowly turning murky. Let me explain what I mean. Imagine you have a glass of pure, clean water, crystal clear. This is your mind when you wake up in the morning. Fresh, open, full of potential. Now, every piece of information you take in, every conversation you have, every video you watch, every article you read, every notification you see is a drop of ink. Some of those drops are clear, helpful, nourishing. They keep the water clean. But most of them, they're dark, heavy, toxic. And every time you add one, the water gets a little cloudier, a little murkier, a little harder to see through. One drop doesn't seem like much. You barely notice it. But by the end of the day, after hundreds of drops, the water isn't clear anymore. It's dark, confusing, overwhelming. And you wonder why you feel anxious, why you feel scattered, why you can't think straight. It's not because something is wrong with you. It's because you've been poisoning your own water without even knowing it. So let's talk about what you're actually consuming. And I don't just mean food. I mean information, energy, influence. Because everything you allow into your space becomes part of your internal world. You wake up. What's the first thing you do? If you're like most people, you reach for your phone. And within seconds, you're scrolling. News headlines, most of them negative.
most of them designed to trigger fear, anger, outrage, because that's what keeps you scrolling. Social media, people you barely know, living lives that look perfect, making you feel like you're behind, like you're not doing enough, like everyone else has it figured out except you. Messages, emails, demands, problems, things that need your attention before you've even had a chance to think about what you want your day to be. And this is the first input of your day. Before you've spoken to anyone you love, before you've moved your body, before you've had a single thought of your own, you've already filled your mind with other people's chaos, other people's opinions, other people's emergencies. And then you wonder why you feel drained before the day even starts. But it doesn't stop there. You go about your day, and everywhere you turn, more inputs. The television in the background, the news channel replaying the same story about everything that's going wrong in the world, the radio in the car, songs about heartbreak, loss, betrayal, or worse, advertisements telling you that you're not enough unless you buy this, look like that, live like them. The conversations at work, gossip, complaints, people talking about what's wrong, what's unfair, what they can't stand. And you participate, not because you want to, but because that's what everyone else is doing. Then you come home. You're tired. You've been taking in information all day. So what do? You turn on the TV, or you scroll again, and you consume more. More drama, more violence, more comparison, more news about problems you can't solve, more shows about people whose lives are more exciting, more successful, more interesting than yours. And slowly, without even realizing it, your mind starts to believe that this is what life is. Chaotic, overwhelming, unfair, scary. Because that's all you've been feeding it. But here's what you need to understand. Your mind doesn't know the difference between what's real and what's just content. It doesn't know that the news story isn't happening to you. It just knows danger, threat, fear. It doesn't know that the person on social media isn't actually happy all the time. It just knows, I'm not measuring up. It doesn't know that the show you're watching is fiction. It just absorbs the anger, the violence, the betrayal, and it files it all away as information about the world, about people, about what's possible. And over time, this becomes your worldview. Not because it's accurate, but because it's what you've been exposed to. And here's the part that nobody talks about. This effect is even stronger as you get older. Not weaker, stronger. Because you've been absorbing inputs for decades. And many of those inputs have been the same inputs. The same news sources telling you to be afraid. The same people in your life complaining about the same things. The same routine that keeps you in the same mental space. And after years of this, your mind starts to believe that change is impossible, that the world is getting worse, that people can't be trusted, that you're too old to do anything about it anyway. But what if that's not true? What if it's just the accumulated effect of bad inputs? I want you to think about something. Who are you spending the most time with? Not physically necessarily, but mentally. Whose voice are you hearing the most? Is it the news anchor telling you about everything that's falling apart? Is it the social media influencer, half your age, telling you what you should want? Is it the friend who's been stuck in the same complaints for the last 10 years? Is it the family member who still treats you like you're not capable? Is it the algorithm feeding you content designed to keep you scared and scrolling? Because here's the truth. You become what you're around. Not overnight, but gradually, invisibly, constantly. If you're surrounded by fear, you become fearful. If you're surrounded by negativity, you become negative. If you're surrounded by distraction, you become distracted. If you're surrounded by people who've given up, you start to give up too. And the dangerous part? You think it's just you. You think, I'm just not motivated anymore. I'm just tired. I'm just getting older. But it's not just you. It's your environment. It's the inputs you've been accepting without question. Now here's the good news. If bad inputs can cloud your mind, good inputs can clear it. If toxic information can weaken you, nourishing information can strengthen you. And at this stage of your life, you have something you didn't have when you were younger. You have the wisdom to be selective. You have the authority to say no. You have the life experience to know not every voice deserves your attention. You don't have to consume everything. You don't have to stay in every conversation. You don't have to follow every news story. You don't have to maintain every relationship. You don't have to keep doing things the way you've always done them just because that's what you've always done. You can choose differently. And that choice, that's power. So let me ask you, what would happen if you did an input audit? If you looked at the last 48 hours of your life and asked, what did I allow into my mind? And is it making me better or worse? What if you stopped watching the news every morning and read something that inspired you instead? What if you stopped scrolling social media first thing and sat in silence for 5 minutes? What if you stopped spending time with people who drain you and started protecting your energy like the valuable resource it is? What if you stopped filling your evenings with mindless content and started feeding your mind something that actually helps you grow? This isn't about being perfect. This isn't about cutting off the world. This is about being intentional. Because every input is a choice, and every choice is either moving you toward the person you want to become or keeping you as the person you've always been. You've earned the right to be selective. You've lived long enough to know that not every voice deserves a vote in your life.
You've seen enough to know that most of what the world is selling, you don't actually need. And here's what happens when you start cleaning up your inputs. Your mind starts to clear. The noise gets quieter. The anxiety loosens. The clarity returns. You start to remember what you actually care about, what you actually want, what you're actually capable of. Not because you added something magical, but because you removed the pollution, you protected the water, and slowly, drop by drop, your mind becomes clean again, clear again, powerful again. But let me be honest with you. Changing your environment is hard because your environment includes people, and some of those people you love. Some of them you've known for decades, and some of them are the very ones who keep pulling you back into old patterns. This doesn't mean you abandon everyone, but it does mean you get honest about who's helping you grow and who's keeping you small. It means you start spending less time in conversations that go nowhere, less time around energy that drains you, less time defending your dreams to people who gave up on theirs, and more time in silence, more time with people who are also trying to grow, more time with content that teaches instead of numbs, more time in spaces that remind you of who you're becoming, not who you used to be. Because your environment isn't just your physical space. It's the mental space you live in. And if that space is cluttered with negativity, distraction, and voices that don't serve you, then no amount of motivation will help. You'll keep getting pulled back.
But when you clean that space, when you become intentional about what you allow in, everything changes. Your thoughts change, your energy changes, your actions change. Your entire life begins to respond. And here's the beautiful part. You don't need permission to do this. You don't need to explain yourself. You don't need to justify why you're protecting your peace. You just start. One input at a time. One choice at a time. One boundary at a time. Because the second half of your life deserves better inputs than the first half accepted. And you deserve a mind that's clear enough to finally see what's possible. But even with clean inputs, even with a clear mind, there's still one relationship that needs attention, one voice that's been with you longer than anyone else. And it's time we talk about what it's been saying.
There's someone who's been with you your entire life, every single day, every single moment, through every success, every failure, every joy, every heartbreak. This person has never left your side, never taken a day off, never given you space. They've been there, talking to you, commenting on everything you do. And here's the thing, most of the time, they haven't been very kind. I'm talking about the voice in your head, your inner voice. And if you're honest, really honest, that voice has probably said things to you that you would never say to another human being. It's called you stupid, told you you're not good enough, reminded you of every mistake you've ever made, compared you to everyone else, predicted your failure before you even tried. And it's been doing this for decades, since you were young. And the cruelty of it is, you think that voice is you. You think those thoughts are just reality, just facts, just the truth about who you are. But they're not. That voice, it's just programming, old programming, from every critical comment you ever received, every time someone made you feel small, every moment you disappointed yourself, every failure that left a mark. All of it got recorded. And now it plays on repeat. Like a radio station you never chose but can't turn off. And here's what most people don't realize. That voice, it's not helping you. It's not protecting you. It's not keeping you humble or realistic. It's destroying you. Slowly, quietly, consistently. Because your mind is always listening, even when you're not paying attention. Even when you think it's just harmless thoughts. Your subconscious is absorbing every word, and it believes you. When you say, "I'm so stupid," your mind doesn't argue. It says, "Okay, we're stupid. Got it." When you say, "I always mess things up," your mind says, "Understood. Let's make sure that pattern continues." When you say, "I'm too old for this," your mind says, "Noted. We'll shut down any motivation to try." Your inner voice is programming your reality every single day. And if that voice has been critical for 40 years, you've been programming yourself for failure for 40 years. Now imagine if you had a friend who talked to you the way you talk to yourself. Every morning they greet you with, "Ugh, you look terrible today." Every time you try something new, you're probably going to fail. Every time you make a mistake, "See, you always do this, you never learn." Every time you have a dream, "That's unrealistic. Who do you think you are?" How long would you stay friends with that person? A week? A day? An hour? You'd cut them out of your life immediately. You'd call them toxic, abusive, destructive. And you'd be right. But that voice in your head, you've been listening to it for decades, and you never thought to question it. You never thought to say, "Wait, why am I talking to myself this way?" So let's change that, starting now. Because if you want to reprogram your mind, you have to reprogram the voice. And here's how. First, you have to catch it.
Most of the time, this voice runs in the background. You don't even notice it anymore. It's just there. So you have to start paying attention. When something goes wrong, what do you say to yourself? When you look in the mirror, what's the first thought? When you compare yourself to someone else, what does the voice say? Catch it. Notice it. Don't judge it. Just see it. Because once you see it, you can change it. Second, you question it. When the voice says, "I'm not good enough," ask, "Not good enough for what? According to who? Is this actually true, or is this just a feeling?" When the voice says, "I'm too old," ask, "Too old compared to who? Too old to try? Too old to learn? Too old to change?" When the voice says, "I always fail," ask, "Always? Every single time? Or did I fail sometimes and succeed sometimes, and I'm just focusing on the failures?" Most of the time, when you actually question the voice, you realize it's exaggerating, it's lying, it's repeating old scripts. And third, you replace it. Not with fake positivity, not with affirmations you don't believe, but with something more truthful, more kind, more useful. If the old voice says, "I'm stupid," the new voice says, "I made a mistake. That doesn't make me stupid. It makes me human." If the old voice says, "I'm too old to start over," the new voice says, "I have experience now. I have wisdom. That's an advantage, not a limitation." If the old voice says, "I'll probably fail," the new voice says, "Maybe, but I've survived every failure so far, and I've learned from each one." You're not lying to yourself. You're just being fairer, more balanced, more accurate. And over time, that new voice gets stronger, and the old voice gets quieter. But changing your inner voice is just the beginning, because there's another tool, something that's been used by athletes, performers, healers, and successful people for generations: visualization. Now, I know what you might be thinking. Visualization? That's just daydreaming. That's not real. But here's what science has shown us. Your brain cannot tell the difference between something you vividly imagine and something that actually happens. When you visualize something in detail, your brain fires the same neural pathways as if you were actually doing it. Athletes have known this for decades. They visualize the race before they run it. They see themselves crossing the finish line. They feel the victory, and their body responds. Their muscles activate. Their confidence builds. And when the actual race comes, it feels familiar because their brain has already done it. You can use this same tool, not to escape reality, but to prepare your mind for the reality you want to create. Here's how. Every morning, before the chaos of the day starts, close your eyes and see yourself, not as you are now, but as you're becoming. See yourself making that decision you've been afraid to make. See yourself having that difficult conversation with confidence. See yourself working on that project you've been putting off. See yourself healthy, strong, clear, peaceful. Don't just picture it, feel it. What does it feel like in your body? What does your posture look like? What does your face look like? How do you move through the world? Make it real in your mind, and your mind will start making it real in your life. Because visualization isn't magic, it's preparation. It's mental rehearsal. And at your age, you have something younger people don't have: life experience. You know what success feels like. You know what failure feels like. You know what courage looks like. So when you visualize, you're not just making things up. You're drawing on real memory, real feeling, real possibility. And that makes it more powerful. But there's one more practice, one that might be the most important of all: meditation. Now, before you skip past this, hear me out. Meditation is not what most people think it is. It's not about emptying your mind. It's not about becoming some Zen master sitting on a mountaintop. It's much simpler. Meditation is just watching your mind. That's it. You sit, you breathe, and you watch your thoughts without getting pulled into them. Think of it like this. Imagine you're sitting by a river, and thoughts are like leaves floating by on the water. Some leaves are worries, some are memories, some are plans, some are judgments. And your job isn't to stop the leaves. Your job is just to watch them float by. Not to grab them, not to follow them downstream, just to notice them and let them go. This is meditation. And it's one of the most powerful tools you have. Because most people, they are their thoughts. When a thought says, I'm anxious, they become anxious. When a thought says, I'm angry, they become angry. When a thought says, I can't do this, they believe it. But meditation teaches you something different. It teaches you, you are not your thoughts. You are the one watching the thoughts. And that changes everything. Because if you can watch your thoughts, you can choose which ones to believe, which ones to follow, which ones to let go. You don't have to believe every thought that enters your mind. You can just notice it and choose differently. And here's why this matters more as you get older. You've been thinking the same thoughts for decades, the same worries, the same fears, the same loops. And they feel permanent, like they'll never stop. But meditation shows you they're just thoughts. They come, they go. They're not solid, they're not permanent. They're just passing through. 5 minutes a day, that's all you need to start. Sit somewhere quiet, close your eyes, breathe slowly, and just notice. Notice your breath, notice the sounds around you, notice the thoughts that pop up, and when you get lost in a thought, and you will, just come back to your breath. That's it. That's the practice. And over time, you start to realize you have more control than you thought, more space, more choice. And finally, there's gratitude. Now, this isn't about toxic positivity. This isn't about pretending everything is fine when it's not. Gratitude is something different. It's about training your mind to notice what's working. Because your brain, by default, focuses on what's wrong. It's a survival mechanism. If there's danger, your brain needs to see it. If there's a problem, your brain needs to fix it. So all day long, your mind scans for problems. What's not working? What's missing? What's broken? What's not enough? And over time, that becomes your entire worldview. Everything is wrong. Nothing is enough. Life is hard. But gratitude interrupts that pattern. It trains your brain to look for what's right, what's present, what's already helping you. And when you do that, something shifts. You're not ignoring the problems. You're just not letting them be the only story. So every night before bed, write down 3 things. 3 things that went well today. 3 things you're grateful for. They don't have to be big. I had a good cup of coffee. Someone smiled at me. I got through the day. I'm still here. That's enough. Because what you focus on grows. And when you train your mind to look for gratitude, you start to see more of it. Not because life suddenly got easier, but because you're finally noticing what was there all along. These 4 practices, self-talk, visualization, meditation, and gratitude, they're not complicated. They don't require special equipment. They don't take hours.
But together, they reprogram how your mind works. They give you back control. Control over the voice in your head. Control over the images in your mind. Control over the thoughts that try to control you. Control over the lens through which you see your life.
And that control, that's freedom. But there's still more. Because changing your inner world is powerful, but it's not enough. You also need to change your outer world, the structure, the systems, the daily architecture of your life. And that's what we need to talk about next.
Let me ask you something, and be honest. How many times have you set a goal, felt excited about it, maybe even started working toward it, and then, weeks later, months later, you realize you've completely forgotten about it? It's not that you gave up, you just lost track of it. Life got busy, other things came up, the excitement faded, and that goal, that thing you said you wanted, just disappeared into the background. This happens to almost everyone. And here's why. You set the goal once. You felt motivated once. But you never built a system around it. You never created the daily structure that would keep it alive. And without structure, motivation dies. Every time. See, most people think structure is the enemy of freedom. They think, I don't want to be rigid. I don't want to live by a schedule. I've spent my whole life following rules. I want to be spontaneous. And I understand that. I really do. But here's what I've learned. Structure isn't the enemy of freedom. Structure is what creates freedom. Because without structure, you're not spontaneous. You're just reactive. You're not free. You're just scattered, responding to whatever shows up, whatever feels urgent, whatever other people need. And at the end of the day, at the end of the week, at the end of the year, you look back and realize you were busy, but you didn't move forward. So let me show you what structure actually looks like. Not rigid, not restricting, but intentional. First, you need to review your goals every single morning. Not once a year, not once a month, every morning. Here's why. Your brain wakes up every day with a question. What should I focus on today? And if you don't answer that question, the world will answer it for you. Before you finish breakfast, you'll be responding to emails, putting out fires, dealing with other people's priorities. And your goals? They'll be buried under the urgency of everything else. But when you review your goals every morning, you're doing something powerful. You're reminding your brain what actually matters. You're setting the direction before the chaos begins. You're programming your focus. Think of it like this. Imagine you're driving to a new city. You put the address into your GPS, and it shows you the route. But then, you turn off the screen. You say, I already set the destination once. I don't need to look at it again. What happens? You miss a turn. You get distracted. You take a wrong road. You end up lost. And then you blame the GPS. But it wasn't the GPS. You just stopped looking at it. Your goals are your GPS. And every morning, you need to check them. Not to stress yourself out, not to feel guilty about what you haven't done, but to remind yourself, this is where I'm going. This is what I'm building. This is what I said matters. Write them down. Say them out loud. Visualize them. Feel them. Just for 2 minutes. That's all it takes. And when you do this, something shifts. Your decisions throughout the day become clearer. Your focus becomes sharper. Your energy goes toward what actually matters. Because you reminded your brain, this is the priority. Everything else is just noise. Second, you need to plan your day like a CEO. Now, you might be thinking, I'm not a CEO. But you are. You're the CEO of your life, your time, your energy, your choices. And if you don't plan your day, someone else will plan it for you. Here's what most people do.
They wake up, they see what happens, they react. Someone needs something, they respond. A problem comes up, they handle it. An email arrives, they answer it. And by the end of the day, they're exhausted. But what did they actually accomplish? They stayed busy, but they didn't build anything. They reacted, but they didn't create. And this is the trap. Because being busy feels like progress, but it's not. It's just motion. And motion without direction is just exhaustion. So here's what you do instead. Every night, or first thing in the morning, you plan your day. Not every single minute, but the important blocks. You ask yourself, what is the one thing I must move forward today? Not the 10 things, not everything on my list. The one thing that actually matters. And then you block time for it. Not the time that's left over after everything else. The first time, the best time, the time when your mind is sharpest. Maybe that's early morning. Maybe it's mid-afternoon. But you protect that time, like an appointment you can't cancel. Because here's the truth. If it's not on your calendar, it doesn't exist. If you don't block time for what matters will never happen. And most people, they give their best hours to other people's priorities. They give their best energy to reacting. And they save the scraps for their own goals. And then they wonder why nothing changes. But a CEO doesn't work like that. A CEO protects the most important work, delegates the rest, says no to distractions, focuses on what moves the mission forward. And you can do the same. You don't need 12 hours. You don't need to be busy all day. You need 2 to 3 focused hours on what actually matters. And the rest is just maintenance. Important, sure, but not life-changing. So plan your day. Write it down. Know what you're protecting. Know what you're building. And when distractions come, and they will, you can say, not now. I have something more important. That's power. That's control. That's how you become the CEO of your own life. And third, you need to upgrade your environment. Now, this is the part most people overlook. They work on their mindset, they set goals, they make plans, but they leave their environment exactly the same. Same desk, same clutter, same distractions, same people, same routines, same spaces, and then they wonder why they keep slipping back into old patterns. Here's why. Your environment is stronger than your willpower. You can have the best intentions in the world, but if your environment is working against you, you'll lose. Every time. Let me give you an example. Let's say you want to read more. You set a goal, you buy a book, you're motivated, but your book is in another room. Your phone is right next to you, the TV is on. Your environment is saying, scroll, watch, distract yourself. And your goal is saying, go get the book, sit down, read. Which one wins? The environment. Because it's easier. It's right there. It requires no effort. And over time, your goal fades. Not because you didn't want it, but because your environment didn't support it. So if you want to change your life, you have to change your environment. And I'm not just talking about your physical space, though that matters too. I'm talking about everything around you. The people, the places, the habits, the routines. Start with your physical space. Look around your home, your workspace. What's supporting you? What's distracting you? If you want to focus, remove the clutter. If you want to be healthy, don't keep junk food in the house. If you want to read, put books where you can see them. If you want to create, set up a space that inspires you. Make it easy to do what you want to do, and make it hard to do what you don't. Then look at your social environment. Who are you spending the most time with? And here's the hard question. Are they helping you grow or keeping you stuck? I'm not saying you need to cut everyone off, but I am saying you need to be honest. If you're trying to build something and everyone around you is complaining about why things don't work, that's a problem. If you're trying to change and the people closest to you keep reminding you of who you used to be, that's a problem. If you're trying to grow and your environment is pulling you back into old patterns, that's a problem. And at this stage of your life, you have earned the right to be selective. You don't owe everyone your time. You don't owe everyone your energy. You don't owe everyone access to your mind. You can love people from a distance. You can care about people without carrying them. You can wish people well without letting them hold you back. This isn't selfish. This is survival.
Because if your environment hasn't changed in 20 years, neither will you. And I know this might sound harsh, but think about it. How many times have you tried to change only to be pulled back by the same people, the same places, the same routines? How many times have you had a breakthrough only to lose it the moment you returned to your old environment? That's not a coincidence. That's how environments work. They reinforce patterns. And if you want new patterns, you need a new environment. So ask yourself, what needs to change in my physical space? What needs to change in my social circle? What needs to change in my daily routine? And then start making those changes, one at a time. You don't have to move cities, you don't have to burn bridges, but you do need to create space for the new version of you. Because that version needs room to breathe, room to grow, room to become. And right now, your old environment is suffocating it. So clean your space, protect your time, choose your people carefully, design your days intentionally. Create an environment that makes success feel natural instead of fighting against you every step of the way. This is the daily architecture. Goals reviewed every morning, days planned like a CEO, environments designed to support who you're becoming. It's not flashy, it's not complicated, but it works. Because structure isn't restriction. Structure is freedom. And when you build the right structure, you finally have the space to become who you've always been capable of being. But even with the best structure, even with the clearest goals, there's still one final element. The element that separates the people who actually change
from the people who just keep planning to change. And that's what we need to talk about next. Here's the question that's been sitting in the back of your mind this entire time. Okay, I understand all of this, but when do I actually start? And the answer that changes everything, is now. Not when you feel ready, not when you have all the information, not when the conditions are perfect, not when you're more confident, not when you have more time, not when you're less afraid. Now. Because here's the truth that no one wants to hear. You will never feel ready. Never. That feeling you're waiting for, that sense of complete confidence, total clarity, zero fear, it doesn't come before you start. It comes after. It comes during. It comes from doing the thing, not from thinking about the thing. And this is where most people get stuck. They wait, they prepare, they plan, they research, they watch more videos, they read more books, they tell themselves, I just need a little more time.
I just need to learn a little more. I just need to feel a little more ready. But that day never comes, because the feeling of readiness is a lie. It's a trick your brain plays on you to keep you safe, to keep you comfortable, to keep you exactly where you are. Your brain doesn't want you to change. It wants you to survive. And from your brain's perspective, change is dangerous. The unknown is risky. Failure is painful. So it keeps you waiting, it keeps you preparing, it keeps you stuck. And the years pass, and you look back and realize you spent more time getting ready to start than you would have spent just starting. So let me ask you something. How many times have you waited to feel ready? How many opportunities passed while you were preparing? How many ideas died while you were planning? How many dreams faded while you were gathering courage? And here's the painful part. You probably had more than enough. More than enough knowledge, more than enough skill, more than enough time. But you convinced yourself you didn't, because waiting feels safer than trying. But let me tell you what actually happens when you wait. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. Waiting doesn't make you more ready, it just makes you older. And at this stage of your life, you know what that means. You know time isn't infinite. You know tomorrow isn't guaranteed. You know that every day you wait is a day you don't get back. So the question isn't, am I ready? The question is, am I willing? Willing to start imperfectly, willing to learn as I go, willing to be uncomfortable, willing to risk failure, willing to look foolish, willing to try, even when I'm scared. Because that willingness, that's courage. Not the absence of fear, but action in spite of it. Let me tell you what this looks like in real life. Imagine someone standing at the door of an airplane, 15,000 feet in the sky. They signed up for this. They wanted to skydive. They prepared. They watched the training video. They got the gear. They listened to the instructor. But now, standing at that open door, looking down at the earth so far below, every cell in their body is screaming. Don't jump. This is crazy. You're not ready. What if something goes wrong? What if the parachute doesn't open? What if you can't do this? And their legs start shaking. Their heart is pounding. Their mind is racing with every possible disaster. And in that moment, they have two choices. Listen to the fear and step back, or jump anyway. And here's the thing. No one standing at that door feels ready. No one looks down and thinks, yes, this feels comfortable. But the people who jump, they don't jump because they feel ready. They jump because they made a commitment and they trust that the parachute will open. And they know on the other side of that fear is something they've never experienced, something extraordinary. So they count to 3 and they jump. And you know what happens? The fear is still there for a few seconds, maybe longer. But then something shifts. The chaos turns into clarity. The panic turns into presence. The fear turns into freedom. And suddenly, they're flying. Not because they waited to feel ready, but because they acted before they felt ready. This is what life requires from you now. Not perfect preparation, not total certainty, just the willingness to jump, to start, to move even when every part of you wants to wait. Because clarity doesn't come from thinking. Clarity comes from action. You don't figure out your life by sitting still. You figure it out by moving forward and adjusting as you go. But there's something else, something just as important as starting, and that's continuing. Because starting is one thing, but repetition, that's where transformation actually happens. See, most people think change happens in big moments, one decision, one breakthrough, one dramatic transformation. But that's not how it works, not really. Change happens in the small moments, the boring moments, the moments when no one is watching, when there's no applause, when it's just you showing up again and again and again. Let me show you what I mean. Imagine a tiny stream of water flowing over a massive rock. The water is weak, The rock is solid, unbreakable. The water hits the rock and nothing happens. The rock doesn't move, doesn't crack, doesn't change. So the water keeps flowing, day after day, week after week, year after year. Still nothing visible happens. But then, after years, decades, something appears. A small line, a groove, a curve in the stone. And over more time, that groove becomes a channel. And that channel becomes a canyon. Not because the water was powerful, but because the water was consistent. This is repetition. This is how you reprogram your mind. This is how you change your life, not through one big effort, but through small, consistent actions repeated until they become part of who you are. One morning of waking up early doesn't change your life, but 100 mornings? That changes everything. One day of eating well doesn't transform your health, but a year of it? That's a new body. One conversation where you speak your truth doesn't rewrite your identity, but dozens of them? That's a new you. 1 hour of focused work doesn't build a business, but 1,000 hours? That's a career. Repetition is the secret, not motivation, not inspiration, not one big push. Repetition. Because your brain learns through repetition, your body changes through repetition, your habits form through repetition, your identity shifts through repetition. And here's the beautiful part. Once you repeat something enough, it stops feeling hard. It stops requiring willpower. It stops being a decision. It just becomes what you do. It becomes automatic, natural, part of your operating system. This is how people transform their lives in their 50s, 60s, 70s, not by doing something huge, but by doing something small, every day until it becomes who they are. So here's what I want you to understand. You don't need to change everything today. You don't need to have it all figured out. You don't need to feel completely ready. You just need to start. One action, one choice, one small step. And then tomorrow, you do it again. And the day after that, you do it again. Not perfectly, not flawlessly, just consistently. Because the person who takes imperfect action every day will always beat the person waiting for the perfect moment. The person who starts before they're ready will always get further than the person who never starts at all. And the person who repeats the right things will always become who they're trying to be. So let me ask you one more time. What are you waiting for? What permission do you need that you haven't already given yourself? What sign are you looking for that hasn't already appeared? Because everything I've shared with you today, you already knew. Deep down, you knew your mind was programmed. You knew you were stuck in patterns. You knew your beliefs were holding you back. You knew your environment was influencing you. You knew your inner voice was too harsh. You knew you needed structure. You knew you were waiting. You knew. But knowing isn't enough. Action is what changes things. And the action doesn't have to be big. It doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to be real. So here's what I want you to do. After this video ends, don't just move on to the next thing. Don't let this moment fade into all the other moments of inspiration that came and went. Do something. One thing. Right now. Maybe you write down the limiting belief that's been stopping you. Maybe you turn off your phone for the first morning in years. Maybe you sit in silence for 5 minutes. Maybe you look at your calendar and block time for what actually matters. Maybe you have the conversation you've been avoiding. Maybe you start the thing you've been planning. Maybe you just take one step. One real, tangible, uncomfortable step toward the person you're becoming. Because that step, that's the beginning. Not the beginning of someday, the beginning of now. And here's what I know about you. You didn't make it this far in life by being weak. You didn't survive everything you've survived by being incapable. You didn't get to this moment by being too old, too late, or too far behind. You got here because you're strong, you're capable, you're still learning, you're still growing, you're still becoming. And the second half of your life, the half that's still ahead of you, doesn't have to look like the first half. It doesn't have to be ruled by old programming, old patterns, old beliefs, old fears. You get to rewrite it. You get to reprogram it. You get to choose it. But only if you start, only if you act, only if you stop waiting for permission and give it to yourself. So this is it. This is your moment. Not someday, today. Not when you're ready, now. Because you're not too old, you're not too late. You're exactly where you need to be to finally become who you were always meant to be. The question is, will you start? Or will you wait another year, another decade, another lifetime? The choice has always been yours, and it still is. You've just listened to something that most people will hear and forget. They'll feel inspired for a moment, maybe a few hours, maybe a day, and then they'll go back to the same patterns, the same beliefs, the same life. But you're different. You wouldn't have stayed this long if you weren't. So don't let this fade. Don't let this become just another video you watched. Go back and listen again. Write down what resonated. Take one action today, and then another tomorrow. Because reprogramming your mind isn't a one-time event. It's a daily practice. And the people who change their lives aren't the ones who had the most talent, the most resources, the most support. They're the ones who decided, and then kept deciding every single day. So decide, right now, that the second half of your life belongs to you and no one else. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. And thank you for being willing to change. The world needs more people like you, people who refuse to stay stuck, people who are brave enough to reprogram their mind and rewrite their story. This is just the beginning, and I'll be here every step of the way.